friends, we are here. I'm still sick. My apologies for my horrendous voice. We're gonna get through it. But I have Sonia G's new mini fusion buffer, or specifically mini sheer buffer. I remember distinctly when her fusion buffer released in June of 2023, one of the comments said, wouldn't it be incredible that Sonia designed a buffer brush but smaller? And here we have it. We have it, family. I have to thank Beautylish and Sonia G first and foremost for the PR gift. Thank you to you both. And I'm just grateful for the opportunity, because although I am aware that it is sold out currently, it does retail for $60, so put it in the budget for when it comes back in stock. I still wanted to come on here, speak about the brush, behind the scenes, make comparisons to other brushes that resemble the shape, not necessarily the bristle type, and play with different mediums. Because yes, I assume the reason it's sold out is because people knew that they had to have this brush and they would already know what to use it with, but maybe they don't. Maybe they just bought it on a whim. Maybe they saw the type of brush and just immediately thought, ooh, stippling, gotta have it. I'm gonna put those assumptions aside and say, hold on, maybe I can still contribute and show my perspective in what I think are ideal makeup items to use this brush with. And again, go through the comparisons and just be nerdy about it, because you know how I love to get nerdy about Sonia G brushes. So with that said, the details are as follows. Yes, it is available exclusively on Beautylish, currently sold out. It retails for $60, and it is made with goat hair and synthetic bristles, thus the name Fusion. Well, the official name is Mini Sheer Buffer, but I think it's also known as a mini fusion as well. And I would highly recommend that you follow Sonia's account, her personal account, and her brush account on IG, as well as to visit her blog, sweetmakeuptemptations.com, where you will get an enormous amount of information, not only about the brush, this one specifically, but all her brushes in her collection, comparisons, descriptions. But what I find most fascinating and most fun is the behind the scene details that Sonia provides us, because I think that enhances the allure behind Sonia's brushes, to know what went into crafting them, with the bristle type, what steps they had to go through in order to create such a beautiful tool. And one of the more remarkable details about the mini buffer is that Sonia explained, despite it being the same design in terms of looks, but at a smaller scale, Sonia, in her own words, wrote that they had to completely recalibrate, and what I interpreted as they had to completely change the template for how this brush is made to create a smaller version of the fusion buffer, which I think fascinating, right? Because it's not as straightforward as, oh, just make this smaller. No, it seems that they had to take different steps entirely in order to craft the mini buffer. And I think that's so cool, and a little more perspective on stippling brushes. Historically, they were tricky to make, because people, I think, usually would reach for a stippled brush to create more of a diffused finish. It's not going to feel as dense, nor is it as dense as other brushes in the market. But typically, stippling brushes can be quite flexible and don't have the strength and just the feedback one might be seeking if they want not only a diffused finish, but also more of a polished blend outcome. And these are just a few examples that I wanted to pull out. This is a refer prototype that never went into fruition, but you see how much it bends compared to Sonia's original fusion buffer. You see there's a little more stiffness here, not to be equated with roughness. There's still nice flexibility at the tip of the bristles, but the second layer here is meant to actually buff and blend the product into the skin, and the same role is present in the mini buffer. And this is a Nakamura Seisa Shuko brush, which is also a goat and PBT hybrid, and still quite flexible, although a little more feedback than the Refer prototype. I would say this is the closest-ish feeling brush I have to the Fusion Buffer, but Fusion Buffer still has a little more strength to it versus the Nakamura brush. But going into base 1, which is from Sonia's original Fundamental series, which went through quite a few iterations. I tried to find this on her blog just to confirm whether it was all goat hair or a goat synthetic mix. But you can see it has that stippling design, but the mini buffer is still smaller. You can see just from the size of the ferrule and head on here, the diameter size smaller on the mini buffer. And there's a little more flexibility here from mini buffer versus first base, or excuse me, base 1. But if I were to make a comparison, if you have base 1, probably the closest relating experience to mini buffer, if you wanted to get your hands on mini buffer but you couldn't, mini buffer feels smaller on the skin, on the face, I should say. And to go into natural hair brushes here, I wanted to compare the mini buffer to Sonia's smooth buffer. The smooth buffer is all dyed goat hair, and this plays an entirely different role, where the mini buffer, because of the hybrid between goat hair and synthetic fibers, you can use this with creams and liquids, which I think people were primarily had on their radar when they bought this brush, whereas dyed goat hair primarily used with powders, not to be used with creams and liquids. The role that the smooth buffer plays is more of a finishing polish role, where after all makeup has been applied, you'll go in with a finishing powder, for an example, the Hourglass ambient powders, any of those shades, tap and buff, and the flat surface area just allows the product to maneuver in a way that is left undisturbed and everything looks smooth and polished at the end. I also wanted to compare this because if you were wondering between Phase 1 and Buffer Pro, the smooth buffer is smaller. And I remember distinctly where Michelle Wong was talking about Phase 1, how this was one of her most favorite brushes. I wonder if it still is, just because, again, of its ability to smooth out your makeup and have your complexion appear virtually flawless. But I also have Bobodo and Yoshiki collab brush from the Koiro series. This is all high-grade undyed Tuckahoe goat hair, and compared to the mini buffer, still a larger brush. You could use this with creams and liquids, the Bobodo brush, but not as resilient as a hybrid brush, meaning one that is made with both goat hair and synthetic fibers. It's just more durable. You can wash it more often and it won't break down as quickly as an all-natural hairbrush would. I would still use this with creams and liquids, but I would lightly tap a palette first and not oversaturate the brush with product. Also use this with buffing and polishing, much how I explained that you can accomplish with the smooth buffer. Those are the brush details, my standout comparisons. Now it's time to get into the demos, and with that said, it is time for you to come in a little closer. That's enough. We are barefaced, but I did apply the Lala Retro Cream as my base, and off the bat, the type of product that I think ideal to use the mini buffer with in the foundation category is one that has more of a liquidy texture. And the reason why I say that is because one of the main traits from the mini buffer or stippling brush in general is to take advantage of this first layer that's light and flexible, and then have the second layer to further push that product into the skin. But because it is a smaller brush and because it's not dense at the surface, it's not going to have the same efficiency as, like, let's say a Sonia's Jumbo Base or even Refer's LC03, right? It's not going to have the same role. And even if I bring in Fusion Buffer, again, I think the Fusion Buffer series shine in more fluid types of products. And at this point in time, I'm not entirely sure. I would have loved for my Dior Forever Skin Foundation stick video to have been uploaded, where you can see the shade, how I feel about it, blah, blah, blah. This is a cream foundation, is a stick foundation, and you could, because the brush head is smaller, strike straight from the stick and go on to the skin. I feel that you'll be here all day, and in my opinion, I think the mini buffer truly shines when you're getting into the cream products that land into the hollows, the cheeks, and even some highlight if you want it. A texture that I think ideal to use with the mini buffer would be, for instance, Lisa's Skin Tint, my Suku foundation in the jar. Those have more mobility on the skin. And even if I wanted to use my stick, I will have to simply create a hybrid, a little cocktail, if you will. And what I'll do is scrape some off from the top. This is in 3.5N, by the way. And in my original Dior foundation stick video, I compared the different cocktails. The lighting wasn't great on that video either, so I wanted to showcase this application again. But with the presence of Lisa's Skin Tint, naturally the texture is going to be a lot more creamy, yes, but a lot more liquidy. And as I said before, now you can maneuver the product easier, especially if you wanted to use this brush for foundation application, right? Because I'm not one to want to spend all day blending out my foundation. I want to get it on quickly and just make sure that everything is blended and smooth. And because, again, the consistency has changed, now the mini buffer can just move on the skin freely and you cover your entire face in no time. Also, because of the stipple design, naturally the brush will not deposit as much product as, again, let's say a denser brush would. So this is, I think, more suitable for light to medium coverage. I think ideal for skin tint consistencies, just to get it quickly blended across the skin. And I adore how this brush feels. Again, you immediately feel the flexibility of the longer bristles, but then you can feel that slightly denser second layer come into play to almost refine the blend from the first layer. It's an incredible experience. And also, if you wanted, I could have used the Fusion to get even more of a broad application, right? And then follow up with the mini sheer buffer to address smaller portions of the face that need more coverage. What do you think about this combination? I expressed in my Dior video that I absolutely love combining the Dior stick with Lisa's Skin Tint, because the Dior stick on its own color-wise, it was a little off. It made my complexion like dull, like there was no, it was just so one note. And I explained also in that video that I could have chosen 3N, but I thought 3N would have been too light. So when mixing both, I found that the shade 10 from the Lisa, sorry about the noise, from the Lisa Skin Tint, when combined with Dior's foundation stick, is perfect. It's perfect. And the sensory experience is outstanding. The brush is soft. Of course, I wouldn't go in like this. If you go in pouncing, I think you are missing out on the brush's ability to completely transform your makeup application. Personally, I think this shines with a buff, but I understand how some feel a little apprehensive with that application technique, because if you have sensitive skin, you are naturally aggravating it by moving a tool in such a manner. But because the first layer is not dense, you can see how the longer bristles are not as dense at the top, and it just has a much lighter feel to the skin. So I think people with more sensitive skin that steer away from the swirl and twirl and rely on the pounce, they might feel it's still suitable to rely on a circular blend with the mini buffer. All right, now we gotta put on some concealer. I went back to my Natasha Denona concealer combination, both R5 and N10 or NP10, because I do have Danessa's Lift and Flex, which I awarded Best Concealer of 2024, but I still have Natasha's concealer, and I think despite how much I love the consistency of the Lift and Flex, the R5 and NP10 combination, I do think is a more fitting shade for my under eyes. I do have to experiment mixing R5 with 9 from Danessa's Lift and Flex. Now, what type Ooh, this is exciting. You know, I immediately thought of Danessa's Groundwork series. We have a lot of examples, okay? We got Defining Neutrals on standby. We got Mirage Shift. We have the Simi Haze, if I could find it. What else? What else can we use? Oh, Glow Maximizer, hello. An opportunity to see this in action on the cheekbones using the same palette and squeezing out some 3N. Fantastic if you wanted to just, oh yes. Now I am pouncing here because I need to be a little more accurate with, I know the product is outstanding because I awarded this one of the best makeup products of 2024. Do we need to request a smaller brush? I don't think we need a smaller brush like this, from the Fusion Buffer series. I just have to be careful with how much I pick up, but lightly pouncing it here on the cheekbones, and again, just picking up a little bit is just outstanding. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. Now we got to figure out, oh my gosh, so many options. I can go in with either Desert, I could go in with Chiseled. You want to go in with Chiseled and see what happens? A tip that Sonia recommend, and so will I, when jumping from different makeup products, it is essential that you wipe your brush on a towel or a tissue to release excess product, avoiding a muddied result, if you will. And the brush is small enough to get into the velvet pomade pan. And I'll tap. Ooh hoo hoo. Again, you most certainly can tap, right? I think tapping just allows for more, for the cheek products, for sure, a more precise application. So that's Chiseled, which for me, for my skin tone, probably a little too cool toned. So what I'm gonna do is follow up with Mirage Shift and just take the bronzer shade and whip it in an upward motion. You probably already concluded at this point that if you wanted to apply, like, let's say the bronzer with the Fusion Buffer, it will lay down a more diffused application, right? Simply because the brush is bigger. But because of the smaller brush head, you get a little more product pickup and more precision here on the application, as you see. And of course, I'm just following up across the forehead. You could also take some on the tip of the brush and pull it down the size of your nose. And just for consistency's sake, I will strike some here through the cheekbones. Now, what I was saying about how the punch in not as favorable for foundation application, simply because of the smaller brush head, and you'll be there all day, right? I like my foundation with the small brush like this and with this flexibility at the tip to go in a circular fashion. That's just my personal opinion. You most certainly could tap in your foundation if you want it with the mini buffer, for sure. But I think the tap in is probably more appropriate with the cheek application. And my apologies for not mentioning this before. You most certainly can use both the mini buffer and the Fusion Sheer Buffer with powders. 100%. They are successful with powder application. Because I have so many powder brushes that I absolutely love, I primarily rely on those for powder application and use this for my creams and liquids, because that's where I think these tools shine with. Now we have to follow up with some blush, of course. I want to go super cocktail. Like, I want to go in with where is it? Well, actually, let me do this first. I want to do two sides. I'm going to wipe my mini again on a towel, take the Merit blush, and see how you can just go straight from brush to cheeks. And that is probably like one of the easiest approaches to using the mini buffer with. It's extraordinary. My goodness. If you want to see the entire video for the Suku Spring Summer collection, the application is smooth. It's even. It's just extraordinary. My gosh, this buffer brush is insane. Insane. This is what I wanted to do. I wanted to mix Hourglass's Unreal Liquid Blush in Vision with Dior's Maximizer in Rosy. The Unreal Liquid Blush goes a long way. Oh, I gotta shake it. I just need one drop and then kind of one swatch of the glow maximizer. That's all we're doing, okay? I'm gonna swirl and twirl. Because I don't want to waste product, I'll just pounce that excess from the finger, but I'm going in with the mini buffer, and now we'll tap and pull just so we could get that smooth application. And I'm carrying it also over the star filter. Oh my gosh, this is an incredible brush. I mean, I knew it would be. That's why I sold out. I don't mean to like throw that in your face, but my goodness, if you were in search of a small stippling brush that expresses both flexibility but also an incredible blend, this is the one. And Sonia had explained why she wanted to create a brush like this, despite the fact that you have stippling brushes already in the market. Those two traits, flexibility and strength, is like bamboo, right? They're hard to achieve just in one tool, but Sonia felt that was missing with stippling brushes on the market, that overall, on average, they tended to be too flexible, that they didn't have that pickup strength, but they had nice movement on the skin. But don't you want nice movement and pickup and blend at the same time? So of course, our Sonia went to work and probably received a bunch of feedback when she released Fusion Buffer to do a mini version. I'm putting on eyebrows now because we put on the rest of the makeup. What else can we use this brush with? My goodness. Well, if I think of anything, I'll make sure to grab that footage and toss it in January favorites, because most definitely this brush is going to end up on that list. If I wanted to quickly, I could show you maybe a little bit of Blooming Romance as a finale. What do? We wipe first. I'm taking one of the, yes, these wine, I don't know how to categorize this. Evermore is what I'm using, and just plopping it here into the hollows. Also maybe going in with the lighter and tossing it here under the cheekbones, under the eyes. Was that a mistake? I don't know. I covered the star filter a little bit, but that's not to worry because I have some left over here, and I'll just tappity tap more on the cheekbones, la la la. And I just wanted to show you quickly, I know you won't be able to use the mini buffer with this palette, but I wanted to quickly show a fun way you could use light scatters. If you haven't checked out my review, please link up above and down below, where if you wanted to go minimalist but take advantage of these insane shades, is to just plop whatever you want to choose, right? So I'm choosing this one here. I'm plopping that on the inner corner only. Also bringing it lower, so I'm striking it in on the lower inner lash line, so it appears like a starburst of color. And I'm not taking it more than that. I'm just focusing on the inner corner here. And if you have around my eye shape, size, or what have you, you could take another shade. Well, I lie. That's step number one. If you want to go minimalist, step number two, you could take your kohl pencil. I'm taking black coffee because we'll end up covering it with one of the light scatter shades, because you can use one of the eyeshadows to layer on your wing and have the multi-chrome as your wing shadow. So I'm gonna wipe my smudger and use that brush, the same brush we used to apply the inner corner highlight, to smooth out our black coffee application. And now taking like a darker multi-chrome shade, this is the third color, and I'm tapping that right on. And since we already drafted the shape with black coffee, we could just follow through with the shadow and not have to worry about shaping it entirely from scratch. So now you got your own multi-chrome liner, which there are multi-chrome liners out there, but this is more like a multi-purpose approach, where if you're like, I don't exactly want multi-chrome all over my eyes, but I also don't want to purchase a separate multi-chrome liner if I already have a crayon pencil and shadows. You know what I mean? Ooh, this side is always gnarly. Actually, this side came out a lot better than the other side, but it's okay. We're following up with that same shadow, and I'm just carefully tapping it here on top of the shape. Beautiful. Let's apply some lashes and I'll be right back. And here we have the final look, and I wanted to provide close-ups just so you can see the texture of my skin with how much makeup I apply. And despite my poor color choices in applying a cool toned contour cream product with a cool tone berry product, still the mini buffer managed to salvage the application where it, although the color might be off on this side, it still looks smooth. Figure that one out. Everything from the contour application to the bronzer application, the cheek application, to the highlighter, to my foundation. My goodness, an exceptional tool. I didn't expect anything less from Sonia, and I am thrilled to see the fusion shape, buffer shape in a smaller size. This hybrid or combination of goat and synthetic with the stipple design, but again, what's unique about this brush versus other stippled brushes in the market is the harmony between flexibility and strength, where you could achieve an exceptional diffused finish, but easily. That's the thing. You don't have to be here blending all day, pouncing all day, swirling, twirling all day. It just whips that product into place. And especially in regards to cheek products, liquid and cream ones, the mini buffer manages to lay down a veil of color that is seamless, even, and just beautiful, flawless, soft focus. I couldn't ask for a better tool. And yes, it's tough because I have other brushes that can take on a similar role. Like for instance, the recently released BK Beauty 116, unfortunately not available as a single, but in the trio set. This is a lot more dense, right? And obviously will pick up more product to pounce onto the cheekbones. What the mini sheer buffer does differently is that it's going to pick up less product and have more of like that sheer finish of color. And that is especially useful for those who found that applying cheek products, cream, liquid cheek products, it appeared heavy on the skin, or they couldn't get the right pressure, they couldn't get the right outcome with those products. I'm not saying this brush is better than this brush. It really all depends on how you want your makeup to look, how you wish to wear your makeup, all that good stuff. It's the same thing with powder products, right? There are those who want a more robust serving of color, and in that case, they'll reach for a goat hair brush, maybe a little more dense so that you have that aggressive pickup and that color payoff. But there are those who want more of a wash of color, and they will then pick a squirrel hair brush, for instance, where it's not going to pick up as much and will appear more of a sheer wash of color. Both are correct, right? I don't want this to seem like I'm pitting brush against brush. Both are correct. I just wanted to outline the differences because it does make a difference based off the brush's head size, the density, the bristles, everything in between. Depending on those factors will largely determine the outcome of your makeup application. I will also keep in mind the type of makeup product. Again, I feel the mini buffer shines in the foundation category with liquid type of consistencies because it's just faster to get all over your face, right? That's just more of a practical reason. You can definitely pounce it on, but I feel like you'd be there all day, right? Or more of a makeup artist approach where they will just strike, you know how they like to paint on foundation in smaller regions so they can focus on refining the blend entirely, whereas me, I'm just like, I just gotta get it on. So that's why I prefer a more liquidy type of consistency if I would like to use the mini buffer for my foundation application. But that doesn't mean you can't use this with creams. I would say if you wanted to, for instance, go in exclusively with the Dior foundation stick, you will probably then have to strike it on first and then use the brush to maneuver the foundation all over. So final remarks on the mini buffer. Definitely, if this is a brush you think that you need, you think that will enhance, amplify your makeup application, especially for creams and liquids, make sure you follow Sonia's accounts, both her accounts on IG, for any restock updates so you are on it. And again, a huge thank you to her and Beautylish for sending this gift. I am grateful, and let me know what you think down below. Have you received it? Have you started using it? What are the standout differences for you between mini buffer and the fusion buffer, between other stippling brushes you have in your collection? Maybe you have a small stippling brush that likens to the mini buffer, and your discoveries, what products you like to use with your mini buffer. I would love to know down below. And with that said, if you made it this far, make sure you like this video. It helps me tremendously in telling the algorithm that I'm worth watching. Consider subscribing, because you'll never know when I'll be back on here with more mini buffer demos. And make sure you click that notification bell so you are alerted immediately of those uploads. I'll see you down in the comments, and I'll see you on here next time.